Tonight, Donald Trump's surprise announcement after Iran's retaliatory strike. What the U.S. president is saying.
So that's good news that the president was able to get that across the finish line.
And what Israel and Iran are not. The rush and complications of getting Canadians out of harm's way. First-hand accounts of acts of kindness during a violent storm in Ontario.
So when the first responders came in, I could lead them to the people.
Plus, smashing through temperature records in these first days of summer. When will there be relief? A survivor of the Banff rock slide shares his remarkable and tragic story.
And right before he passes away, he did scream out loud, telling me to run, run, run.
And a homegrown basketball star goes supernova.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Michael Jordan, Shaquille O'Neal, and now Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
How his hometown is celebrating their Canadian King of the Court.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening. The world is watching and waiting tonight to see if a ceasefire between Iran and Israel revealed by Donald Trump will hold. The U.S. president's abrupt announcement reportedly even catching his top officials by surprise. All this unfolding after Iran's retaliatory strike on a U.S. base in Qatar. CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbin leads us off.
This is Iran's response, retaliation to America's massive bombardment of Iran's nuclear sites. Missiles lighting up the night sky over Doha, causing panic at a shopping mall. Iranian state TV said it attacked the largest U.S. military base in Qatar, home to some 10,000 troops that President Donald Trump visited just a month ago. Iran says it was bomb for bomb, claiming to fire the same number as the U.S. dropped. Satellite images showing the damage to 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities.
All 3 sites sustained extremely severe damage and destruction.
The president called Iran's retaliation tonight very weak, even thanking Tehran for the early warning notice. Qatar said 13 of 14 missiles were intercepted, no injuries reported, and the airspace is safe. At first, the president warned Tehran not to retaliate.
Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
Even floated the idea of regime change. Iran's supreme leader has been in hiding and not seen in weeks. But the president now posting, perhaps Iran can now proceed to peace, and I enthusiastically encourage Israel to do the same. Even as Iran and Israel have pounded each other for days, the president stunned everyone, saying on social media a ceasefire could be in the works, insisting America's massive strikes on Iran have done the job.
So that should be enough at this stage of the game to set the conditions, if the United States accepts that, to bring people back to the table to start talking about how we're going to end this.
The president posting tonight, congratulations, world, time for peace. Even as he reserves the right to respond to Iran, there are no active plans to retaliate. Omar?
All right, Joy Malbin in the U.S. Capitol tonight. Thank you. And Ottawa today revealed how many Canadians have fled the Middle East and how many remain. CTV's Mike Lacouture is tracking the government's response in Ottawa. Mike.
Omar, government officials say any Canadian who has requested to get out of Israel and the West Bank has been able to do so. However, with no diplomatic presence in Iran, things are more complicated there. The Canadian government has been able to have 4 buses stationed at the border crossing between Iran and Turkey, and, according to officials, just 10 Canadians made use of that service yesterday. Now, this morning, 55 Canadians took advantage of buses that the government arranged to take people from Tel Aviv to Jordan, while there were 7 Canadians who got out of the West Bank in a similar way. Now, in all cases, these people are being brought to locations where the Canadian government is facilitating access to commercial travel options. According to Global Affairs Canada, there are 6,000 Canadians registered in Israel, 5,500 in Iran, and 400 in the West Bank. Mia Monson is a Canadian student in Eilat, Israel.
There are a few options that you could take through Jordan. I'm not sure it's like the safest thing, but that is options that I'm pretty sure the Canadian government has facilitated.
In the past 10 days, hundreds of Canadians have been moved out of the region, and the government says it's ready to help more. Officials did say they have the capacity to facilitate travel out of the region, and they encouraged Canadians to take advantage of these options. And with no sign of de-escalation, it's unclear just how long those options for departure will be in place. Omar.
All right, Mike, thank you. Joining me now is Arif Lalani, former Canadian diplomat to Jordan, Iraq, Afghanistan, and the United Arab Emirates. Mr. Lalani, thank you so much for joining us. You have got extensive experience in the region. Let's start with that ceasefire. The U.S. and Qatar say there's one in place. Israel and Iran are not commenting tonight. What should we read into that, and will it hold?
Well, I think the president's probably gotten out a little bit ahead, and officials are trying to finalize the elements of this deal. It seems to be very complicated, depending on who should start the ceasefire first and then what happens next. So I'm not at all sure that we have a ceasefire yet, and certainly I'm not at all sure whether it's going to stick.
Assuming that all sides have agreed to a ceasefire, what are the factors motivating the parties?
Well, I think there are a lot of factors motivating the parties. First, I think President Trump simply seems to want a deal wherever he can find it, and I think he found an option here. I think the Israelis are very successful at intercepting the ballistic missiles that Iran is firing, but they're running out of interceptors. And they're not easy to replace, and they're not cheap to replace, and they need the Americans to replace them. And at the same time, I think the Iranians are running out of ballistic missiles, but are also primarily interested in preserving their regime. So I think there are a number of factors.
All right, former Canadian diplomat Arif Lalani, thank you. And developing late tonight, Iran's foreign minister says there is no ceasefire agreement, but that Iran has no intention to continue fighting if Israel stops its strikes. And Israel's military is saying that Iran has fired more missiles. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, at least 9 people were killed in Kyiv overnight after Russian missiles hit residential areas and hospitals. 33 others were injured. That conflict is on the agenda for the NATO summit, which begins tomorrow and which the Prime Minister is attending. Today, in a move that signals a new era of cooperation with the European Union, Canada signed a new security and defense partnership at a joint summit in Brussels. CTV's Jeremy Charon is there.
A morning visit to a military cemetery kick-started Prime Minister Mark Carney's first full day in Belgium. A ceremony to honor hundreds of fallen Canadian soldiers buried here after the First and Second World War. Ahead of this Canada-EU summit, a meeting between Carney and European leaders focused on joint security and defense.
Very, very warm welcome to this EU-Canada summit.
We look forward to moving to an ever closer partnership with the European Union.
Here, Carney signed a new security and defense pact with European Union leaders aimed at diversifying its trade and defense industrial partnerships, billed as a first step towards more defense procurement from Europe and an eventual plan to get Canada into the Rearm Europe military program.
It will help us deliver on our new requirements for capabilities more rapidly and more effectively. It will help build our industries, secure our jurisdictions.
But Carney's European trip has been dominated already by the escalating war in the Middle East. The Prime Minister spoke with President Trump overnight and says de-escalation was a focus of their conversation.
Where the state of Iran has been a sponsor of terrorism, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and beyond. And where at least in our opinion, Canada has listed the Iranian Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization, active terrorist organization. These are violations of international law.
Carney travels to The Hague in the morning for a highly anticipated NATO meeting where it's expected the conflict in the Middle East will dominate too. NATO's Secretary General was pressed on it today.
That is why NATO has said Iran should not, and this is a consistent position of NATO, Iran should not have its hands on a nuclear weapon. So, and I would not agree that this is against international law, what the US did.
The Hague summit will also see the alliance look at a new baseline defense spending target of 5% of GDP. Canada only this month committed to meeting the current 2% target this fiscal year, 10 years after the alliance agreed to it.
Omar?
CTV's Jeremy Charon in Brussels tonight. Back here at home, millions of people in Ontario and Quebec are sweltering under a massive heat dome with record-breaking and dangerous temperatures. CTV's Sarah Plowman on what's in the forecast.
3 days into summer and scorching temperatures linger.
My kids hate the heat. They can't take it. They go outside, it's like a wall.
Millions are sweltering under a heat dome parked over much of Ontario and Quebec that's inching east. The humidex is pushing temperatures into the 40s.
From Windsor to Wawa, from across Quebec, from the western Quebec right through to the Saguenay, where everybody's under this incredible heat wave.
In Toronto, about 2,700 customers had no power for about 3 hours. Crews are looking into what happened. Every school in the Toronto district has a cooling room. Not all have air conditioning, and its school board can't afford to change that.
Every school is looked at. What can we do to cool or make sure we have a cooling center? And then again, if they're about to embark upon a renovation, that's when there's a consideration.
In Ottawa, trains slow due to the heat. Demand for cooling is high.
We're about 130% capacity right now.
In Fredericton, as the degrees add up, many add water or shade.
Like the increase in the temperature, man, it was almost absurd.
Seniors, children, people with chronic illnesses, and those who work outside are especially at risk to heat illnesses.
Best approach in the condition like today for the most vulnerable, stay out of the heat. Try to cool the room.
It's also recommended to stay hydrated.
As it becomes more and more severe, that's when you start to see the neurological complications. So you start to get, a little bit of a headache, maybe a little bit more confused. Maybe you're sort of acting in a way that would be atypical, and that's the beginnings of heat stroke.
As for how long this heat will last, expect relief by Wednesday. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, Fredericton.
Stories of selfless acts of kindness are emerging after a violent storm tore through parts of northern Ontario over the weekend.
2 people on our end of the campsites were 2 broken legs at 2 different sites. So I just wanted to make sure where they were at and find a way to get to them. So when the first responders came in, I could lead them to the people.
Several people were injured in the storm. Police say nearly 300 people had to be evacuated from 2 provincial parks, while 2 townships a couple of hours east of Sudbury remain under a state of emergency. A possible tornado touched down and roads were flooded and damaged. Some good news tonight for residents of the city of Flin Flon in northern Manitoba who were forced out because of wildfires. Here's CTV's Alex Carpa.
Favorable conditions are now allowing the province to get a better handle on the wildfire situation. The state of emergency that had been in place for almost a month in Manitoba has now been lifted.
We're still providing these services, but we're able to deliver them using the normal channels of government.
Over 21,000 Manitobans were forced to evacuate their homes due to the wildfires, but many are going back.
Do you miss Flin Flon?
Go back here.
Noelle Drimmy and her family have been living in Winnipeg since they were forced to leave Flin Flon. They will now be heading home later this week.
I feel cautiously optimistic.
Returning home is something Drimmy has looked forward to for weeks, but doesn't know what she'll be returning home to.
What the state of the fridges and freezes are, and because we had power outages and things like that. But what I've heard from other people who have returned, things seem relatively okay.
But not everyone has a place to go home to. Cindy Pedwell felt helpless watching her doorbell camera as the fire ripped through her place in Denair Beach, Saskatchewan.
It was really quite devastating and heartbreaking.
She has a business in Flin Flon and is eager to reopen, but says she won't be going back for a few days.
I also don't want to be part of the mayhem of the convoy that goes back on Wednesday, because when we left in it, my gosh, it took over 3 times as long to get where we were going.
As Flin Flon evacuees slowly migrate back to the community, the mayor says that many services won't be readily available and is asking those who are returning to bring about 2 weeks worth of food.
People have had enough. They want to go back to their homes. They want to go back to their lives. So it's worth trying, but it isn't outside of the realm of reason that something could happen again.
As for Drimmy and Pedwell, the return will be overwhelming, and both say they are prepared for an emotional experience. Alex Carpa, CTV News, Winnipeg.
For the first time tonight, we're hearing the harrowing story of a survivor of that deadly rock slide in Banff National Park last week.
We just heard that loud noise, and then shortly after the rocks fell, and I froze right there and then, and my friend Light, like even right before he passes away, the best thing he did was he still tried to save me. He did scream out loud, telling me to run, 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 and that's kind of like what helped me get back on to my senses.
Khalid El Gamel says he watched his friend and roommate Hamza Ben Hilal get overtaken by the slide. He didn't make it. This picture taken a day before the tragedy. El Gamel was airlifted to hospital where he's now recovering from multiple fractures and cuts and bruises to much of his body. Coming up.
For mundane intellectual labor, AI is just going to replace everybody.
A stark new warning from the Canadian known as the godfather of AI. Just in time for the summer, Canada's first ever beach cleaning robot has been introduced in Ontario. Beebot, as it's known, made its debut on the shores of Lake Simcoe. The fully electronic machine cleans sand and rakes seaweed up to 30 times faster than humans. It's part of a project to remove plastic debris from lakes across North America. A warning now to millions of workers about the threat of artificial intelligence, and it's coming from the Canadian known as the godfather of AI. CTV's John Venevali-Rao explains.
Indiana gonna win, baby! In an advertising first, this completely AI-generated commercial recently ran on American primetime TV. No one you see is real. Everything created in 2 days using text prompts. Until now, the ad would have required hiring a production crew, and it's an example of the kind of job disruption this Canadian AI pioneer worries about.
I think if you make lots and lots of people unemployed, even if they get universal basic income, they're not going to be happy.
University of Toronto professor Jeffrey Hinton is a Nobel Prize-winning computer scientist.
If I worked in a call center, I'd be terrified.
On a podcast, he said the tech he helped to develop could soon enable one person to do the work of 10, and fears job losses are already beginning to happen.
And I think for mundane intellectual labor, AI is just going to replace everybody.
This all comes as Amazon CEO recently told employees expanded use of AI will reduce its total corporate workforce in the next few years. Already, university graduates are having a tough time landing that first job, and AI adoption likely a contributing factor.
In technical fields like computer science, graduates are having a harder than usual time finding positions.
According to StatsCan, 3 out of 5 Canadian workers are employed in occupations with a high potential for exposure to AI. As for how smart chatbots are, a group gave them an IQ test for humans.
Last year at this time, the top model had an IQ of about 97. This year, it had an IQ of 137.
Hinton was asked what job he'd tell his own kids to get if they needed one.
Trained to be a plumber.
Really?
Yeah.
Something a machine can't do for now. John Venevali-Rao, CTV News, Toronto.
Still ahead. We'll tell you about the dangerous animal on the loose in Calgary. A Calgary woman was sent to hospital after being attacked by a bobcat.
And she was screaming. I could hear her screaming. I saw the attack.
Witnesses say the bobcat sprinted across the street and jumped on the woman while she was walking her dog. She suffered cuts and scratches. Neighbors say the family of cats live under a deck, but emergency crews have not been able to catch them. Thieves in Toronto used an excavator to try and break in at a Scotiabank overnight. Police say the suspects weren't able to get in and fled before police arrived, leaving behind the machine and extensive damage to the building.
It's not the wedding. The problem is the system. One big billionaire can't rent a city for his pleasure.
Greenpeace joining locals in Venice protesting the lavish destination wedding of Amazon founder Jeff Bezos and journalist Laura Sanchez. The multi-day event later this month will see a number of celebrities descending on the ancient city. Some Venetians are using the wedding to highlight concerns about over-tourism in the UNESCO World Heritage Site. And stunning first photos from the world's largest ever digital camera perched on a mountaintop in Chile. Images so detailed, displaying each one would take about 400 ultra-high definition television screens. All part of a project to detect observations and changes on 40 billion stars, galaxies, and other objects in the sky. Already, the camera has captured more than 2,000 asteroids that have never been seen before. Still ahead, the Canadian king of the NBA, how his hometown is reacting to his team's championship win. Well, he is the pride of Canada. And now, after leading Oklahoma City to victory in the NBA Finals, basketball phenom Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is being spoken of in the same breath as legends like Steve Nash and Michael Jordan. CTV's Mike Walker now with how Shai's star is shining bright in his hometown.
A giant image of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander proudly on display outside his former high school, Sir Alan McNabb. And there is civic pride today with the Hamilton native, now an NBA champion.
Proud to be a Hamiltonian. It's like he has wings, he can fly. It's just so hard to describe. I'm just totally amazed.
Considering I went to McNabb, it's amazing.
It's good for Hamilton, and it's nice to hear a Hamilton boy winning it.
Gilgeous-Alexander led the way with 29 points as the Oklahoma City Thunder won their first NBA championship, defeating the Pacers 103-91 in Game 7.
It's everything. That's why you play the sport. You play the sport to win.
The 26-year-old capturing the finals MVP, a first for a Canadian.
You're asking about what makes him, separates him probably from the bunch. I think that's it, is consistency and the discipline to get better.
His father calls this success a blessing after years of hard work and a strong support system.
Late nights in the gym, early mornings, trainers and coaches and all the people that helped us get here. You don't do that stuff by yourself.
Gilgeous-Alexander now enters an elite club, becoming only the fourth player in NBA history to win league MVP, finals MVP, the scoring title, and championship, all in the same season.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Michael Jordan, Shaquille O'Neal, and now Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So he's in great company, rare company. And look, I have seen enough to say with confidence that this is the greatest Canadian basketball player ever.
The way that he's representing Canada is just unbelievable.
Tim Francis was Gilgeous-Alexander's high school basketball coach and watched the finals beaming with pride.
We saw the hard work. We saw the work ethic. Being an NBA champion, being an MVP of the finals, an MVP of the league, I don't think anybody saw that coming. But we did know that he was going to get to whatever his goals were.
He says Gilgeous-Alexander's success story on and off the court is a huge inspiration for young players.
Humble beginnings and hard work and what that can get you to, how that can pay off.
Mike Walker, CTV News, Hamilton.
A lot of pride right across this country. That's a snapshot of this Monday for all of us at CTV National News. Thank you for watching. Good night, and see you tomorrow.
Canada's #1 newscast for excellence in journalism.
We begin tonight with breaking news.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina, winner of the Canadian Screen Award for Best National Newscast. Watch weeknights at 11